your life.
Okay, so good morning. My name is Ashleigh King. I am an entrepreneur and I also am a creative. So I really love to be doing all kinds of fun and creative things and also meeting people from different walks of life. And I'm really honoured today to have been invited by Steve Pugh to be one of his presenters on the Roadmap MBA. It's a really special opportunity and privilege. And I really hope to hear from people watching back or watching live. If you have any questions, please let me know. So today I'm going to be talking a lot about women in entrepreneurship. And I also wanted to see, to share a little bit about me and my journey so that you know why I'm so passionate about female entrepreneurs. So as I said, I'm a creative entrepreneur and I started a business unexpectedly when I was made redundant in 2019. And I didn't know what I was going to do or how I would be able to make money. So I looked at the strengths and skills I had at the time and started doing baby showers and hen dos. And I would go and make spaces look beautiful. I'd have pretty lights, I'd have gorgeous flowers, but I was spending lots of money and not making any because I didn't know how to price things. I didn't know how to manage cash flow. I spent a fortune on courses and mentoring. And I just really didn't know what I was doing. I was actually running a hobby. If I look back, I wasn't really thinking about anything from a business perspective. I was fortunate in 2019 to start my MBA at Newcastle University Business School. Now I know this show is the Roadmap MBA, and I'm actually a huge fan of the Roadmap MBA. I think it's a brilliant tool to learn real business skills in a practical way, in a workbook method. And I will be covering in future some of my thoughts on classroom versus learning-based MBAs. But I do want to say that doing a business course is such a powerful thing when you started a business because it helps you to think through all of those decisions you've made, where things are going well, where they're not. And I wish I had done that earlier. At the same time, having failed at certain things, I was able to learn in a better way because it meant that I was able to understand why I had gone wrong or where I had gone wrong. So I'd like to share a little bit more about that business journey. So I went and did my Master's in Business Administration, and being a full-time student and trying to study whilst run your business was quite challenging because it was mostly in the events industry. And then COVID happened. So for many people, we have all been affected in different ways. But the events industry in the UK was massively hit by COVID because we were in lockdown and we couldn't access any of our usual opportunities. You know, bars were closed, there were no festivals. It was a really challenging time. And for me, I had around 10 grand of work that was just lost overnight. And so what I wanted to say is I was forced to pivot just by circumstances. And at this point, I already had a podcast, which I was really fortunate to have. So that's Nurture Your Zest, my podcast. And I started to think, well, what can I do? I can't do events. I can't go and make spaces look pretty. I don't know how to actually edit. I don't know how to do any of these skills, but I love talking. I love talking to people and interviewing them. So what I decided to do was start a show called Nurture Your Zest 100 Conversations. And that was a live stream. And I taught myself how to do everything from home. So I went from being in a really gorgeous professional studio with brilliant sound to being in the attic of my house in a tiny corner. And that was really scary, but I did it. So I think what I'd like to say there is challenging yourself is really important, but also, in my opinion, anyone can start a podcast. And if you ever need to learn how to do a podcast, that is now what I do. I train people to create their own stories, share their stories with the world. And it's really fun. And so I've completely pivoted. But I do want to talk today about women in business generally, why women start a business, some of the challenges they may face, some of the things that really worry me about entrepreneurship for women, And I just would really love to open up this discussion. So this week, as many people may know, it's International Women's Day on the 8th of March, which happened this Tuesday. I've been to so many events over the past week. I feel like I've been celebrating left, right, and centre. And a lot of those events have included female entrepreneurs. So I was really delighted last Friday to go and see the amazing Sarah Davies, who is her background is crafting, but she has been on Dragon's Den and is on Dragon's Den. She also was on Strictly Come Dancing, and it was really wonderful to be around her and hear some of the stories that she shared about what's been going on for her. And, I think as women, it's really important that we have mentors that we can look up to, role models that we can aspire to be. And so with Sarah, she really shared what it's like for her. I mean, she's a mom. She's got, I think, 2 or 3 kids. She was doing Strictly Come Dancing, running a business with over 200 staff. She's got a husband who's busy. She's got family commitments and caring commitments. And I think the fact that she was so honest and raw about what it's really like for her, one of the things she shared was how important her health is to her. And I think as well, for many entrepreneurs, not just women, you are running around, especially in the beginning, trying to pay the bills, manage your cash flow, win clients, network, sell yourself, do your website. There's so much to do. But with Sarah, what she had said is she realized she needed to prioritize her health because she wasn't able to keep up with all the things she needed to do. And the only time she could squeeze that in was at 5 a.m. Because that was the only time she could go and run. It's free. She wasn't paying for a gym membership that she didn't need. And she was actually able to go running every morning just to help focus her, get her energy up, and just look after her health. So I think that was one of the events that I've been to over the last few weeks that's really inspired me. Another event I held on Monday myself, which I did a panel on the power of fierce authenticity, where I was speaking to some really brilliant women about their thoughts on what it means to be authentic. And what I was really inspired by at this event was a young girl, only 10 years old, who baked some of our cakes. So she has a venture every Friday in Gateshead. She stands outside her house and sells cupcakes. And she's increased her prices recently to 50p. I've been very happy to mentor her and actually fund her food and hygiene certificate. So she had the courage to speak on the night, and I'd asked her to tell people about her new venture, Mooncake Bakery, and also why she wants to bake, what she loves about it, and how people can support her. So I was really proud of her because when I asked what fierce authenticity means to her, she had said, well, actually, it's having the courage to let your light shine, to be bright and to be yourself and be unique. And I just love that. At the same time, there is something she said that really worried me. And this is something she said, to me in some of our mentoring sessions. And that is that I don't do the maths. My brother is my banker. My brother looks after my money. And that is something that I think is really important for us to think about. How are we encouraging young girls and women into entrepreneurship? What are we doing to support them in developing certain skills and helping them to feel confident? When I did some research into the challenges females face when they start a business, the challenges women face in many areas of their life, there is always an expectation that the man will sort the money. And now that isn't for everyone, but it's certainly something I see in research around gender and entrepreneurship. So an example of that I've seen recently is somebody sharing a story of when they go to investor panels, pitch meetings, negotiating contractual agreements. They have a business with their dad, and actually they are a 35-year-old woman going into these meetings, and all of the technical questions will go to their father, whereas they'll get the niceties. So tell me about the business, how are you doing? But when it comes down to what is the technology that underpins this, that is seen as, those questions can only go to her father. And so why are we still doing that? Why are we not asking women to be able to explain the technology and information around their own products that they are actually launching? I find this really interesting. And so those are just some musings I wanted to share. Another thing that was interesting from my panel on Monday was just the whole discussion around who is in the room. So when we are looking at who is sitting on investment panels, who is making decisions about which business gets funded, we have things like, you know, do we have enough diversity on our panels? And I don't just mean in terms of race or faith or different backgrounds. I'm talking about disability, accessibility. One of the things that research says around women and the limitations they face is going into a board and pitching your idea and telling people, this is what I want to do, this is the ways you can help me, this is where I need support. Many women actually struggle with just going into that room. There's a lot of psychological barriers. There is the concept of imposter syndrome. What if they find me out? What if I'm not good enough? So there is a lot of research to say that women will not actually put themselves in those situations. But there's also many, many lived experience and stories of feeling that they haven't been empathized with, they haven't been able to actually have, you know, any understanding of just empathy and compassion to their circumstances. There's many women tell me of their experiences where they are asked, you know, when are you going to have a child? When are you going to start a family in those sessions? So if you're going for investment and the investment panel says, okay, tell me about your plans for children, that to me still seems problematic. It is a valid question, of course, if you're going to invest in somebody and they're going to take time away from their business. But there are so many things that I wonder, do men get these questions also? So I'm just thinking out loud of some of the questions that I've been having. One of my panelists on Monday, Kay Grayson, who is someone I really love working with and look up to. Kay is a rapper. She also is a hip hop artist. She is now being funded through Arts Council England. She's doing some amazing work and I love watching her grow. She has been working so hard all the time on all of the work she does. But Kay shared, even in the rap industry, how, you know, she is going and she's working really hard, but she's going into these spaces that are so male dominated. And being in rap, you know, it's which stereotypes does she need to be? There's either the idea of you going to fit the media and the brand, and the production company will say you need to look like this, you need to wear that, you need to work on this area. But for Kay, you know, I'm really proud of her because she's just living her best life as herself and doing amazing things. At the same time, she's smart because she's not just investing her time in her music. She's also spending time learning other skills. She's writing, she's giving back to her community. She's going into schools and working with the BBC and building her profile. So these are all really interesting concepts. But similarly, another panelist, Fajiro, she was talking about, you know, coming from a very Nigerian traditional family and expectations of being a doctor or a lawyer, but actually she wants to do fashion, and so she is a creative stylist, a creative director of her own company, and she is, you know, incredible because she's working as a student, you know, final year, lots of assignments, but she's also doing fashion stuff with the Fashion Society, you know, as one of their committee and senior leadership. She's organizing shoots. And so Fajiro was explaining why it's so important that we don't just put a label on someone and think, okay, they are a particular race or they are scientific, they're doing a science degree, so they can't be interested in fashion, or they can't be interested in God, or they can't be interested in any of the things that she shared. So I think what I've learned over this week, you know, there's been some incredible stuff going on in the northeast of England where I live. But also around the world, I've loved to see so much on my feed, on LinkedIn particularly, which is where I mostly hang out, of women inspiring women and celebrating women. I was also fortunate on Tuesday to go to Leeds. And so in Leeds, I was able to chat to Laura Baker, said that name completely wrong, Laura Bartlett, who's not related to Stephen Bartlett. But Laura is the founder of House of Cocoa magazine. And she had a brilliant event, breakfast brunch on Monday morning, Tuesday morning. And what I loved about her event is the other woman I was able to meet and learn about. So one of the things that came up in that discussion, really honestly, was around dress and what we wear. So again, as female entrepreneurs, it's very much about how we put ourselves together, how we put ourselves out, you know, the impression we want to make. And so many of the women on that panel inspired me because all of them were wearing such unusual clothing that I wouldn't have expected at a breakfast brunch with lawyers and people from, you know, insurance backgrounds and financial services. So one of the girls was wearing leopard print suit with patterns that completely clashed, and I absolutely loved that she had that courage to wear that. And it made me think again about that theme of fierce authenticity and wanting to really be yourself. But one of the discussions that came up a lot there was how difficult it is to start a business and keep your relationship going. And I thought that was very interesting. It's something I've mused on a lot. You know, do you stop and have a child? Do you seek investment? All of these questions we've already discussed. But all 4 of the panelists who were there spoke about, you know, following their dreams and having the courage to follow their dreams and how busy it can get, but then also trying to juggle somebody else's needs and their relationships. And it's not just about relationships with the people we love, our partners, it's also our family, our friends. So again, this is a challenge for many female entrepreneurs because usually, according to research again, women are the primary caregiver, whether that is childcare, whether that is caring for ailing parents, it may be caring for a disabled family member, it might be things like cooking or washing dishes or things like this. But it's really sad that so many people have ideas that they want to follow, they have dreams that they want to chase. But the scary thing is for them, without the funding and the startup capital, they can't follow those ideas. And then at the same time, they have to think about all these other sacrifices and compromises they may need to make in their own life. And so this is something that's been just whirring around my head all week, is how can it be more fair for women? What can we do? It's wonderful that there's so many exciting things going on all over the world, and people are really starting to open up this conversation. At the same time, how much of it is virtue signaling by organizations? How much of it is people being invited, women being invited to be on senior leadership positions, to be panelists? A year ago, I was really annoyed because there was a panel for, it was around energy and engineering, and it was all 4 of the panelists were male. There was no diversity in race or gender. So I was really shocked that on this panel, there was not one person of colour or a female. And when I'd asked and I'd said, I really wanted to come to this event, I was really interested in the topic, it was about clean energy. Why do you not have any diversity on your panel? You know, what are you doing? And they had said, it's just so hard for us to get a person of colour on this panel. And it's so hard for us to get a female speaker on this topic. Do you know what was the craziest thing? Is on that particular day, it was National Women in Engineering Day. And I could not believe that they would choose to do the event on that day, but also that same institution had over 20 incredible women working in energy, working in renewable energy, engineering, professors, academics. And I was just thinking, what are you doing? You haven't thought about this from the beginning. You're only thinking about it when it's pointed out to you, you know, during the event. And this happens a lot as well for women in leadership positions. And I wanted to point this out as well. There is a lot to say around, we've talked about lack of getting funding or the challenges around workplace commitments, caring responsibilities. But what about things like being invited onto panels, speaking? sometimes you are paid, sometimes you're not paid. I'm in a very fortunate position now. When I'm training, when I'm presenting, I'm able to actually be paid for that time. And I know that's really fortunate because not everyone's in that position. But it means that what I'm trying to do now is when I invite speakers, to also pay my speakers and to ensure that I have diversity of thought and representation, because representation matters. But there are so many women who are invited to be on charity boards, to be speaking, to be panelists, often because they have a diversity or they're from a particular background, or maybe because they have their own personal brand, and that personal brand is attractive because they know if they hire that person, they're going to get lots of audience viewers or other sorts of things. But what I wanted to point out with that is it can be really problematic, because if you are using the same person over and over again, if you as an organization are inviting the same people but not paying them for their time, not really thinking about the commitments and the sacrifices they have to make in their life to be there, I think these are really important discussions for us to start having. So in summary of all these things that are going on, I just think there's so much we can do to support young women as well, girls particularly. There's some brilliant charities like the Girls Network that I love and I have mentored for before. The Girls Network work with disadvantaged women. They tend to be around 14 to 16, and they are usually in schools, and they pair them with a mentor. So it will be a woman in a leadership position or in their career, and it's someone that they can look up to. And I was really surprised when I worked with my mentees to see some of the challenges they were having as 14-year-old girls. So I've had two mentees while working with the Girls Network. One of the mentees was working every hour under the sun on the weekend and managing their schoolwork because of their parents' financial situation. I loved the independence of this young woman. She was working so hard, but her confidence was so low. At the same time, she had a lot of difficulties with boundaries with her friends, with saying no, with choosing what was right and wrong. She knew innately what was important to her and what her values were, but she didn't know how to communicate that with other people. And that was something we worked on together. But it made me think about some of the pressures on young women, pressures on, feeling like you have to share a picture that's inappropriate if you want someone to like you, feeling like you have to wear makeup because if you don't wear makeup then you're not valued, feeling like if you're not white then you're not enough. This is something that's been coming up a lot in some of the conversations this week, is this idea of white being pure, and this is such an outdated belief. I think it's been really sad to hear some of the stories this week of women of colour saying how they have felt that they are not valued or they're not represented. And it's so true. Looking at, the panelists around us, what are we doing to actually speak up for all of these issues? One of the things that breaks my heart with some of the mentees I work with is the idea that young women cannot put a picture on social media without a filter. And that I just find so scary, that we can't even be ourselves online and in person as well. And I think it can be really worrying that with social media, we can see so much online that doesn't give a fair representation of what life is really like, what life is like behind the scenes for that person. So the comparison that happens for young girls between themselves and each other, we don't have enough data to understand the ramifications of social media. So what's going to happen in the future once we've had time, to see how this plays out, how it's affecting our minds, how, we can be challenged in this way. So another thing that I wanted to say about the Girls Network was just the work they do is incredible, but seeing young women who, when you ask them what are their aspirations, what do they want to do, they saying, well, I want to be a piano teacher, I want to be a dancer, I want to do this. Let girls choose what they want to do. Those were my dreams. When I moved to England at 14, I remember being asked in school, what do you want? And all I had said was, I want to be a mother. And I was 14 and everyone in my class laughed at me. And I find it really strange that at 33 years old, I've achieved so many things. I have 2 degrees, you know, I've won awards, but I'm still not a mother. And that is something that I find really jarring with my dreams at 14. And similarly, I wanted at 16 to do hair and beauty. I wanted to nurture people, to look after them, to make them feel special. But my grades were okay, they were good. So I went and did A-levels and I hated it. And even now at 33, I would still love to do hair and beauty. I would love to work in costume or theatre design. So again, let women choose what is right for them, give them the options and empower them. I think the biggest reflections I can say from all of it I've learned this week is make spaces. If you look around the room, you're on a board, a steering group, a panel. Who is not in that room? Who could be there? Who could be adding value? You know, don't make decisions and policies about people that you don't understand what they're really going through. We see this with ableism. We see this with things like disabled toilets, designing disabled toilets in buildings, but there's no way for someone who's disabled to get into that toilet without a support worker with them because they can't actually open the door. There's so many little things like this where people are making decisions and not asking those who really need that support to work through what they really want. And so this is my first time doing the Roadmap MBA. I'm so glad to be talking to you today. I want to finish with something that shocked me as well doing an MBA, since this is a channel about MBAs and many other things. So in my class of 29 people, there were only 6 women. And that is really interesting to me that still we don't even have in our MBA classrooms enough women who can come into that space. Interestingly, because I studied at Newcastle University Business School, I was really fortunate to receive a scholarship. I didn't get a full scholarship, but it was a partial scholarship. My program costs £24,000, and that's likely to rise as are most MBA programs. It's a huge investment, and I wanted to say, for anyone studying, especially when you are older, it's not just the investment of money, it's the investment of time, it's the investment of the opportunity cost that you won't be able to earn for that time. And so again, making things accessible, mentoring, you know, opportunities to progress are really important. And there are some recent stats I looked at the gender gap between MBA graduates really surprised me. So if you have an MBA and you are a guy, you can expect to pretty much within your first 5 years be earning £55,000 a year or more, but that's the least you should be expecting. And for a woman, it's £45,000. So there is still £10,000 difference in pay gap between men and women. And this is recent research. And I just find it fascinating that we are still in this position in 2022. So those are just some of my thoughts. I will be presenting again on the show. I'm so grateful to anyone listening and watching. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on female entrepreneurship, on challenges women face. I know that I'm coming at this from a white woman, cisgendered woman, who has very different experience to many other women. So I know that I won't be able to fairly share everyone else's perspective, and it's not my responsibility to, but I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. So please comment below. I'll be checking on the comments as well after the fact. So if you're watching and you want to drop a comment, please do. And if you want to catch up with me, I have a YouTube channel called Nurture Your Zest. I'd love to see you over there or any of my other places that I hang out online. Thank you so much.